The winter that broke the hills came early, with wind like rusted nails and snow that strangled cattle where they stood. The McAllister ranch sat sunken between two red ridges, abandoned now except for the girl. Her name was Lona, 17, a whisper of a thing with pale eyes and blood beneath her fingernails that wouldn't wash out. They tried to kill her, her uncles or maybe cousins. She stopped keeping track after they burned her mother's Bible and threw her into the mule barn. They left her there half dead, ribs split and teeth loose, bleeding into hay already soaked with horse piss. Her right arm wouldn't rise. Her breath came shallow. It was the third time they'd laid hands on her like that, but this time they hadn't meant to leave her breathing. The men rode off south, chasing the last of the stolen steers toward Fort Wallace, thinking the blizzard would finish her if their boots hadn't. Lona stayed on the ground until the second night, when hunger outran pain. She crawled out beneath the mule's corpse and drank melted snow off the trough lip. Her lips cracked until they bled. She chewed leather reins when there was nothing else. By the sixth day she stood, not straight, not strong, but she stood. The cabin was gutted, doors broken, stove cold, mirror smashed to reflect nothing. She made her bed in the root cellar, wrapped in the buffalo hide her mother died beneath. She didn't cry any more. Crying wasted warmth. The ranch was dead land, worked thin and spoiled by the McAllister boys' greed. No chickens, no dogs, only hoofprints and ghost breath in the frost. Still, Lona stayed. Where else would she go? She had no name but McAllister, and even that was spit-stained. Her mother's family was far off or long gone, and the law had no time for half-starved girls with fractured bones and no dowry. Come spring, her hair grew long again. She cut it with a skinning knife. She caught a hare, then two. Learned to load the rusted colt her mother hid in the chimney. The land didn't forgive, but it watched, and Lona watched back. By the time she saw the cowboy ride through, thin, limping, on a horse more ribs than flesh, she'd already killed 3 men. Quietly, efficiently. One with a brick, one with her mother's colt, and the third with a shovel and a ditch he'd helped dig. She didn't know his name, just that he was bleeding and lost. He wore a threadbare blue coat, not military, but old enough to remember war. One arm hung limp. He slumped forward, barely conscious, hat low over a hollow face. His horse stopped at the gate and didn't move again. Neither did he. Lona waited until dark, then approached with the colt drawn. The cowboy didn't stir. Only when she pressed the barrel to his cheek did he blink. "You here to finish it?" she asked. "No, ma'am," he rasped. "Just dying, but thank you kindly for asking." She studied him a long while. He was young still, maybe 30, maybe less if the world had been cruel to him too. He didn't flinch when she lowered the gun. Didn't move at all when she pulled him from the saddle and dragged him toward the barn. She fixed his shoulder with a broom handle and whiskey. He screamed once, then bit his lip bloody. She let him. Pain kept things honest. When he woke proper, it was morning, and she was sharpening the skinning knife near the stove. "You got a name?" he asked. "No." He nodded like that made sense. "I'm Jude." She didn't respond, but she brought him water. Jude stayed, not because he wanted to, but because he couldn't leave. Infection clawed into his side, and he spent weeks in fever. Lona fed him scraps, brought snowmelt in a tin basin, and patched his coat when the seams split. She never smiled, she never laughed, but she never let him die. On the 24th day, he stood. "You'll need to work if you're staying," she told him. "I ain't staying." She didn't argue, but she handed him the axe. Together they split wood until their hands bled. They didn't speak much. Words cost energy, and they'd both learned long ago not to waste what little the world gave. That spring the hills bloomed in brief defiance of death. Wildflowers pushed up through ash and bones. Coyotes returned, so did trouble. The McAllister boys came back drunk and poorer than they left, sniffing out their old land like wolves that forgot they'd been chased off. Lona saw their tracks first, then the fire they'd left at the tree line. fresh, mocking, as if to say, "We know you're breathing, girl." She didn't run, she loaded the Colt. Jude sharpened the axe. They came at night, 3 men. One Lona recognized by the scar she'd given him across the jaw. The others were mean-eyed and silent, not family but friends of those who tried to kill her. Jude met them at the fence. "This ain't your place no more," he said. The man with the scar spat. "Ain't yours either." Lona stepped into view, rifle in hand. "Leave," she said. They laughed. They stopped laughing when the first shot took one's kneecap. Jude moved fast, faster than she expected. The axe found its mark clean through the collarbone. Blood soaked the grass. Only scar remained. He stared at Lona, then at Jude. "You gonna let her shoot me?" he asked. "I ain't lettin' her do nothin'," Jude said. "She's her own reckoning." Scar turned to run. She didn't stop him. Not that night. When summer came, they slept in the same room but not the same bed. Trust didn't grow fast in such soil. But each night, Lona watched his breath steady as he lay by the stove, and each morning, Jude rose with the sun to tend the fences. Neither said the word home. Not yet. But Lona knew something had shifted. Not because he stayed, but because he hadn't asked her to leave. By the time August curled dry and yellow around the hills, the ranch had a new name among the riders who passed whispers through border towns. They didn't call it McAllister anymore. They called it Widow Hollow, though no one could say who died or who was left. Just that it wasn't safe to trespass. Just that a girl with ghost eyes ran it with a man who never smiled. Jude built the porch back up plank by plank. Lona trapped foxes and tanned their hides with lye and spit. They had no cows, no brand, no claim worth writing to the state, but they held the land with blood and grit and an unspoken vow that nothing would take it from them again. Trouble still came, as it always does when the world smells weakness. One afternoon, a tall man in a tan coat rode up alone, boots polished, revolvers bright. He didn't smile, didn't threaten. He just leaned on his saddle horn and spoke like a banker. "Paper says this property was foreclosed last year," he said. "Sold at auction to a firm out of Abilene. I'm to survey the boundaries and make arrangements for your departure." Lona didn't blink. She rested her hand on the rifle beside her. "This land's ours," Jude said, stepping out from the cabin. "Not anymore," the man replied. "I got documents and I got a badge in my coat. Now I'm not saying you have to leave today, but you will leave." Lona studied the man. His hands were too clean. The way he looked at her was like someone measuring a broken horse, tired, wary, but certain he'd win. "Come back tomorrow," she said flatly. The man raised a brow. "Why?" "Because I need time to dig the hole you'll go in if you don't." She didn't raise the rifle. She didn't need to. The man didn't ride away fast, but he did ride away. Jude turned to her, the faintest shadow of something like a grin flickering across his face. Might have exaggerated about the deed. "Didn't matter," Lona replied. And it didn't, because by then the land had already chosen them. In early September, a letter arrived. No name, no return mark, just a scrap of canvas-wrapped paper nailed to their door while they slept. "You missed one, he's in Sweetwater, still wears his daddy's ring." Lona read it once, then again. Her hands didn't shake, her jaw set like stone. Jude watched from the fire. "Friend of yours?" "No. You know who they mean." She nodded once. He didn't ask more. He just stood and started saddling the horses. "You don't have to come," she said. He didn't answer, but when they rode out the next morning, he was beside her. Sweetwater sat 2 days southeast, a mining town strangled by dust and whiskey. They reached it by nightfall on the second day, faces covered in bandanas, dust thick in their teeth. Jude found a room above a livery, and Lona sat with her back to the door, eyes on every man who passed below their window. The one they were looking for wasn't hard to find. Elias McAllister had a voice like a sermon and a temper like firewood. He ran a saloon with a poker table rigged by mirrors and a girl with bruises on her throat who never met anyone's gaze. He wore a silver ring with a blue stone on his trigger hand, the same ring Lona's grandfather once wore before the boys carved him up for the land. She watched him for 3 nights, saw how he drank, how he flirted, how he backhanded a stable boy for speaking too loud. The rage hadn't aged, it had fermented. Jude offered to do it. She said no. "I don't need a killer," she told him. "I need a witness." On the 4th night, she walked in alone. The saloon quieted, not because they knew her, just because they could tell something wasn't right. She moved like a ghost that still carried weight. Elias didn't recognize her, not at first. Not until she took the seat across from him and placed her mother's Colt on the table. "You left me under a mule," she said. "You remember that." He stared, brow creasing. The whiskey in his glass trembled in his hand. "I remember that voice," he muttered. "You said I was dead." "You should be." He reached for his belt. She shot his hand before it got there. The bullet snapped bone and blood sprayed across the table. Men screamed. The piano stopped. No one moved. Lona stood. "I ain't dead," she said. Then she left him there, howling. Jude met her outside with the horses ready. They didn't wait to see if Elias bled out. The law would come, or he'd live without that hand. Either way, she was finished with him. By morning, they were gone from Sweetwater, vanished into the hills like a rumor. They spoke little on the ride back. The silence between them wasn't cold, it was full, shared, like breath between verses of the same hymn. When they reached the ranch, a storm was waiting. Rain like hammer blows, wind strong enough to shear limbs from trees. Lona stood in the doorway and watched the horizon burn silver with lightning. That night, she didn't sleep by the stove. She lay beside Jude, skin cold as creek water, eyes wide and dry. "I don't love you," she said. "I know," he whispered. But his arms wrapped around her anyway, and for the first time since the barn, she let herself sleep. She didn't dream. When the river thawed and the quail came back, Lona found herself waking before the sun. The nightmares had eased but not disappeared. She didn't scream anymore, just clenched her teeth so hard they ached by morning. Jude was already outside most days, building something he wouldn't explain. Posts sunk into the north field, fence lines drawn without cattle to pen. He worked like the land owed him something, and he aimed to collect. "Why bother?" she asked once, squinting at his hammer rising and falling. "Because someday we'll have more than ghosts out here." She didn't argue, but she didn't help him either. Instead, she took to the high ridges with the rifle, learned the paths the elk followed, mapped out the old Indian trails her mother once spoke of in whispers. Lona knew the land better than most men knew their wives, where it bent, where it lied, where it waited with something sharp in the grass. One morning she found buzzards circling low above the ravine. She followed their path to a broken wagon, fresh wreckage, 2 dead mules still tangled in their reins. Blood pooled near the wheels, but no body. She searched the trail and found him half a mile off, crawling. A boy, maybe 12, blonde hair, sunburnt, mouth cracked. One leg twisted beneath him like it hadn't healed right. She knelt beside him. He tried to jerk back. "I ain't gonna hurt you," she said. His eyes were too wide, animal-wide, the kind that sees death in every shadow. "Where's your family?" He didn't answer. Who did this? Still nothing. She lifted him. He screamed once, then bit her coat to keep from doing it again. Jude frowned when he saw them come down the trail. You pick up strays now? He asked. He didn't ask for it, Lona said. Neither did I. They set his leg and cleaned the blood. The boy didn't talk for 3 days, didn't eat unless Lona sat beside him. Jude kept his distance, watching from the porch like a man trying to decide if a fire was worth keeping. When the boy finally spoke, it was in a whisper. Name, Emmett. She nodded. What happened, Emmett? Wagon got hit, men in gray coats. Took Pa's gold tooth, shot Ma in the throat. Lona looked away. I know men like that. He nodded solemnly, as if understanding more than a boy should. I tried to kill one, he said. Had a knife. Jude crouched beside him then, slowly, carefully. You live, Jude said. That's enough for now. Weeks passed, Emmett stayed. He wasn't soft. He watched Lona with something close to reverence, though she never tried to earn it. The boy sharpened her blades without being asked, helped patch the coop when a weasel got through. Even Jude, wary at first, started teaching him rope knots and how to whittle without cutting bone. They didn't speak of family, not theirs, not his, but the silence felt familiar. Then came the rider. A woman this time. She arrived at dusk, riding a stallion black as spilled ink. No dust on her boots, no fear in her eyes. She had the look of someone who'd survived too long to pretend kindness was free. She didn't ask permission to ride up, just stopped at the porch and nodded once. Looking for a girl, she said. They say she shot Elias McAllister in the hand and burned his saloon down 2 nights later. Jude leaned against the doorframe. You the law. I'm worse. Lona stepped out. You found her. The woman studied her a long time. He's dead now. Elias shot himself with the wrong hand, couldn't hold a bottle, couldn't stop shaking. I didn't burn it down. Didn't say you did. Lona folded her arms. Then why are you here? The woman dismounted. Because a girl like you don't last long in the open, and because there's a bounty on your head now, dead or alive, $200 state-backed. Jude stiffened. Who's offering? He asked. Texas land interests, the ones who think McAllister land ought to be theirs by blood. Lona's face was still. They'll come. Not yet, but they will. What's your stake? She asked. The woman didn't blink. I'm building something, a kind of alliance. Outcasts, killers, women with too much blood on their hands and nowhere left to ride. You're one of us. Jude stepped forward. She's not going anywhere. Lona stopped him with a glance, then turned back to the woman. What's your name? Call me me. I'm not joining anything. Didn't ask you to, just came to warn you. You stay out here much longer, you'll drown in men who think you owe them your bones. She climbed back onto the stallion. You change your mind, head north of Elkstone, ask for the widow's post. We don't run, we don't bow, but we do kill clean. Then she rode off. Jude watched until the dust disappeared. She's trouble. They all are, Lona said. But that night she lay awake with her hand on the colt, not because of fear, because of memory, and the way Me's voice had sounded like a bell tolling for something yet to come. Winter came late that year. When it arrived, it came black and sharp and unrelenting. Coyotes howled from ridgelines. Emmett set traps. Lona taught him how to skin without slicing the pelt. Jude buried his last good boot when it froze through. They made it work. They always made it work. But every now and then, Lona would catch sight of a shadow on the hilltop. A rider who didn't come close, a glint of glass, a scrape of boot on stone. The men hadn't forgotten her, and the land was watching, waiting. In spring, blood soaked the snow behind the smokehouse. They found the dog first, throat torn open, belly split. Then Emmett's tracks, too small and too fast, racing down the gulch and back. He'd returned breathless, white-lipped, whispering, "There's men out there, 4, maybe more, watching from the trees." Jude locked the door. Lona laid the rifle across the table. No one spoke. It wasn't the first time death had waited in the trees, but it was the first time they weren't sure if it would wait much longer. That night they didn't light a fire, didn't cook, just sat with weapons close, backs to the wall, watching the dark twitch at the edges of the windows. Emmett clutched a hatchet with hands that still shook too much. Lona didn't tell him to sleep. At dawn, a voice called out. "Lona McAllister," it rang hoarse and slow. "We've come to settle things, fair and square." She stepped onto the porch. Cold air pressed against her skin. 5 men stood at the fence line, horses behind them, rifles across their backs. All wore dust coats, some with gray sashes tied at the arm. No badges, no flags, just the look of men who'd never once been told no. One stepped forward, younger, clean-shaven. His coat hung open over a rusted pistol. "You're livin' on land that ain't yours," he said. "You killed Elias, burned his holdings, put fear into men better than you." Lona didn't blink. "I put fear into men who deserved it." He smirked. "That's so, funny thing, we've got a bill here, signed, sealed, says this place belongs to the Torrance Trust. I figure we'll reclaim it by noon." Jude stepped beside her. "That trust ever bleed before?" The man glanced at him. "Only when it needs to." Then he turned, polite as a preacher, and walked back to his horse. They gave no deadline, no warning, but Lona knew what was coming. They buried the traps that night, shards of glass inside biscuit tins, tripwires strung low through the trees, stakes buried where hooves would break. Jude lined the house's walls with powder flasks and kerosene tins. Emmett sat in the attic with a hunting scope and a long-barreled .22. His hands were steadier now. Lona moved like water, silent, cold, exacting. She stripped the rifle, cleaned each part, whispered to herself in a language only her mother knew. "This land chose me," she murmured once. "It'll bury them." Jude heard her. He didn't correct her. At dawn, the shooting started. They came fast, reckless, 1 man shouting, 2 riding the fence low with torches in hand. Lona's first shot dropped the rider before the torch could catch. His body rolled under the hooves of the second horse. Jude shot from the barn loft. He'd carved the firing slit himself, months ago, just in case. The shot punched clean through the belly of the lead gunman, and he folded without sound. The others scattered, but not far. Gunfire raked the porch, wood splintered, a window shattered. Emmett fired twice from above and hit something. Someone screamed, then silence. Smoke began to rise from the dry grass beyond the coop. Lona grabbed the kerosene and ran toward the wind. Fire had to be starved fast. The wind favored them, barely. Then came the voice again. "You could have sold this place, girl. Could have walked. You chose blood." She didn't answer. She crouched behind the watering trough and waited. 2 boots came into view. Slow, careful, rifle aimed low. She stood and shot twice. The man dropped, throat torn open, blood steaming on the grass. Behind her, the barn lit up, fire catching the roof. Jude cursed. Lona ran to him, found him limping toward the blaze with a wet blanket across his back. Together they beat it down until the flame died, choking on its own heat. But the cost was time, and when the last man came, he came from behind. He'd circled wide, silent as guilt. Emmett saw him first, but the .22 jammed. The man kicked through the kitchen door, a pistol raised. Jude turned too slow. Lona didn't. She threw the skinning knife, not aimed, not clean, but desperate. It caught his throat, not deep, not deadly, but enough. He stumbled. Jude surged forward with a broken chair leg and brought it down 3 times, then twice more, then once for the boy. After that there was only breathing, shallow, ragged. The porch sagged, the walls were shot to hell, the coop smoked. But they were alive. That night Emmett spoke first. "I could have killed him," he said, "if the rifle worked." "You froze," Jude told him. The boy flinched. "But you stayed," Lona added. "That's the part that counts." They ate in silence, salt pork, hard bread, water boiled in tin. Later Jude brought out a folded cloth, opened it slow. Inside was a small, tarnished pin, a cavalry crest, worn, old. "I used to wear it," he said, "before the war went sour." He held it out to Emmett. "You want it." The boy took it with both hands, reverent. Lona watched them, then turned her gaze to the hills. They won something, maybe not peace, but space, time, a foothold. She didn't trust it, not yet. But for the first time since the barn, she walked outside without a gun in her hand. The moon was out, cold, full, watching. She stared up at it and breathed. Come summer, the ground baked hard enough to crack hooves and split fence posts. Buzzards wheeled over the hills in slow circles, and even the creek ran shallow, trickling like something dying. No one came for a while, no riders, no letters, the kind of silence that felt unnatural. Lona didn't trust it. Jude took to building again. Not fences this time. He began shaping something from the blackened barnwood, working with saw and chisel while the sun punished everything else. A table, maybe, or a coffin, she didn't ask. Emmett grew leaner, harder. He no longer flinched at gunshots. He no longer looked behind him when walking across open ground. But he still had that soft place inside. Lona saw it when he fed the lame hen or stitched up a fawn they found bleeding in the gulch. A tenderness he hadn't yet burned out. She wondered how long it would last. One morning, Lona woke to find Jude standing at the edge of the field, staring east. Riders. 3 of them. Not like before, no dust coats, no rifles out, just slow-moving figures with slack reins leading a mule cart behind them. Me was among them. She dismounted first, said nothing at first, just met Lona's gaze like 2 knives catching the same glint of sun. "We've been hunting," Me said. 2 towns burned since spring, 1 sheriff hanged, another disappeared, all by men under Torrance's coin. They've moved south, your name still being passed like a warning, but it's colder now, quieter, they've shifted focus. Lona stepped off the porch. "Why are you here?" "Because we need a place." Lona narrowed her eyes. "You said you had 1 widow's post." Me looked out over the ranch. It burned 3 weeks back, not a body left standing. Jude stood silent beside her. "They'll come here," he said, not a question. Me nodded. "We can hold," Lona said. "Maybe," Me answered, "but we don't want to hold, we want to end it." She stepped forward and unhooked the mule cart's cover. Inside, beneath a canvas sheet, lay 3 long crates. One open, revealing rifles, shotguns, powder tins, and something darker. Dynamite, thick sticks bound in oilcloth. "End it," Me repeated, "with fire." Jude stared into the cart, then looked to Lona. Her silence held weight. Finally, she spoke. "Emmett stays. If we ride, if we burn it all, he stays." Me gave a long nod. We'll build something new here when it's done. But Lona shook her head. No, you can build, but I'm not coming back. Me raised a brow. You think vengeance ends with you. Lona's jaw clenched. I don't care if it does. They rode out 3 days later. Just Lona, Jude, and me's two fiercest women, Latter and Crow, both scarred deep, both dead-eyed when it came to killing. The Torrance outpost lay south of Bridge Hollow, an old relay station turned fortress, backed by private guns and federal silence, 30 men, maybe more. They didn't sneak in. They walked up the road bold as judgment. Lona went first, rifle on her back, her mother's Colt at her hip. She wore the shawl her mother once wrapped her in the night before she died, stitched through with red thread and old prayer words. When the first bullet was fired, it didn't come from their side. But the last one did. The fire burned 3 days. Smoke curled up black into the mountains, thick enough to blot out the stars. Every building collapsed, every horse released, every ledger soaked in oil. Me lost 2 of hers. Crow took a bullet through the lung and kept walking until the station master bled out under her boot. Jude killed 5, quietly, 1 with a rope, 2 with a knife. Lona killed the last herself. He wasn't running, he wasn't fighting. Just sitting in an office lined with polished rifles, staring at a photograph of his family. I don't know you, he said, calm. You do now, she replied. And she put 1 bullet in his throat, then turned and walked out as the fire began to take the walls. When they returned, the wind was different. It wasn't silence. It was peace. The kind bought with ruin. Emmett ran out to meet them. His eyes went wide at the soot, the blood, but he didn't ask questions. He just grabbed Jude's arm and pulled him toward the pump to clean up. Me lingered. We'll move north, she said. There's talk of land near the old mines. No lords left to claim it. Lona nodded. Me looked at her a long while. You're sure? I've buried enough, Lona said. It's time something lived here. Me touched her shoulder once, just once, then mounted up and rode north with her last 2. Jude stood at the porch. She's right, you know, you could have led them. I don't want to lead, Lona said. I just want the ground to stop shaking. He nodded. I can stay, he said. Lona looked at him. And for the first time she smiled, not wide, not bright, just enough. You already did. Years later, they'd call it the Quiet Hollow. Not Widow Hollow, not McAllister Ranch. Just quiet. A place where storms once died. Where a girl rose from blood and silence, not to rule, not to preach, but to plant something that wouldn't burn.